So I'm here continuing with my series of sharing my birth story. And I want to continue with the process of preparing myself to give birth. This is something that more so emerged around the sixth month. Why? Before I was not really into like looking for new ways of giving birth. I thought that I was going to be doing what people in my family have done, like getting a C-section, going to hospital. And it was only from the experience of going to a hospital and testing the field, so to speak, that I realized I wasn't going to go that route. So upon watching the Business of Being Born documentary, as I shared in my first video, that's when I decided to dive in to investigate other ways in which I could give birth, and that's where I decided I wanted to give birth in water, water birth actually. So that was the beginning of it. So what I started looking for was information on YouTube. So that's why I'm also making these videos, because a lot of women inspired me to do what I did. And by sharing their eating habits, um, their lifestyle as well, that assisted me a lot to start challenging the notion or the idea of the pregnant woman that has to be stable and laying down all the time, and like feeling sick all the time and feeling tired and feeling this and that. And as I mentioned in my previous video, I am the kind of person that says, "Oh, that's what most people go through." Huh, really? Is it such a nuisance to be pregnant? Let's test it out. Let's find ways to make it better. And I found out that many women have actually taken like full exercise regimens, like prenatal yoga or any other exercise like swimming while pregnant. And this is something that really caught my attention, because um, I wanted to challenge the notion of, getting too overweight and getting too like lazy, just laying down and that sort of thing. And I liked walking, and that I kept doing throughout the whole pregnancy. I did walk kilometers and kilometers up to 3 days before my actual birthing process started with the contractions. So I share this because to me it was like a whole new thing to see a woman pregnant being active. And this I first saw in my prenatal yoga classes, to which I'm eternally grateful for, because as I mentioned in my previous video, the first one actually, that's where I met sorry, I'm going to that's where I met my classmate that gave birth through having that water birth with the person that became my midwife actually. And that's through her that I got to see that it was possible to do it in another way. And also that's when I saw pregnant women, like doing all kinds of exercises that, to me, at least from my family and like my culture and how I had seen pregnant women around me, it was like, no, 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 you cannot do that. You cannot do squats while you're pregnant. No, you cannot, do exercises that are physically demanding. And there I just proved everything wrong, right? So I also started going to swimming. That was the best. I mean, I'm talking about 2019. So this is pre-madness. The pre-madness world where everything was fine and dandy and we were all happy apparently. So that's why it was possible to go swimming, and that was the best decision ever. It was the first month actually was a birthday present from my partner. He knows how much I like swimming. So that was in September. So I was around 7 months pregnant. No, no, I'm kidding. Like 6 or so. And that was very, very supportive. I went there also like just, days before starting my labor as well. And that was extremely supportive. I wanted to challenge myself physically, because by then, I also got to know that the birthing process, the natural birthing process, was going to be very demanding. So I wanted to build some strength, to build some stamina, you know. And this is not for everyone. Not everyone has to do it. I'm just sharing my experience and how it was for me, because I wanted to challenge that physically draining experience of being pregnant, as I have heard from most women. And every single lady from YouTube that I would hear, they would say, "Oh, but you know, my yoga class really made things easier. It made me feel better physically, emotionally." So that's what I tested out, and it did. It actually went. I think that without all the exercise, and I was the most active throughout my pregnancy, even more so than without being pregnant, because I would go to the yoga class and to swimming and doing my regular walking on a almost on a daily basis. So that really supported me to keep physically, you know, fit within the context of being pregnant. I would say building some strength in the muscles and everything, which was very handy when it came to the actual birthing process, which I will tell later on. And also mentally, I think that releasing dopamine, releasing all those good things that one does when exercises, is actually very supportive for all those hormonal imbalances and that sort of thing. So um, I think that was one of the best decisions, and it was contrary to what, you know, people around me would say, like, "No, no, no, how are you squatting like that while pregnant? Oh my God!" But no, no. Everyone was like, "Oh no, no," and I'm like, "No, this is me. This, you know, other women do it. This is a new thing." So I like, I really enjoy breaking those taboos of how you physically must feel while pregnant. So this would be my recommendation. If you're physically in a position to do so and your doctor says it's okay, go for it. Like every single time I would go to the doctor and he was like, "Oh, everything's well. Oh, you're super well. Oh, you're not even like swollen or anything. Oh, that's fine. Oh, you." So I was like, "Come on, I'm coming here every single month so to be told that it's all going super well." So you know, we did it for the sake of it. I wasn't as informed in terms of the medical establishment back then. I probably, if I would be pregnant now, I wouldn't go as often as I did. I would trust my body a lot more. But back then, I was still like beginning to know more about what does a natural birth intake. So physically, I felt really good. After the 3 shitty months of feeling nausea and feeling like nothing, I didn't want to do anything. I was just lying on bed, really watching traveling YouTube videos. That was my life. It was miserable. But once I went through that stage and I started gaining like more activity, I could do my regular stuff for my work, and then I would be able to do my exercising in all sorts of ways. Plus, it was very supportive to be along other pregnant women in my prenatal yoga class and get to know them until this day. Well, right now we're not that close because of this whole thing. A lot of them are really scared about it and do not want to be, you know, close to people. It's understandable, but you know, with those that do want to get along, and we gather still with our babies. So that was really awesome. And then the life-changing experience, I would say, was when I finally went to meet our midwife. Her name is Minerva Ixewatl, and she worked with another lady, Maria Luisa Segura, here in Puebla, Mexico. I'm sharing their names in case someone is interested, or I can give you the contact if you, I don't know, want to give birth in Mexico, for example, because with all the craziness of the COVID regulations and what's happening to pregnant women having to take vaccines and whatnot, Jesus Christ, I would not want to be a pregnant woman right now and in a position of having to go to a hospital. And I would totally recommend giving birth at home, and doing so with midwives that are not too institutionalized, meaning those that are not like your regular doctors that will follow procedures and inject vaccines and that sort of thing to your baby. That's another topic I will probably discuss with more depth. But talking to our midwife was a life changing experience when it comes to getting that support that we were looking for. Why? as I mentioned, I used to go to the and I went to the doctor every single month, regular one, and basically I would get these checkups and everything was fine, etc. But whenever I asked, like, okay, how is the birthing process going to be, it was very, very vague. So basically, that prompted me to feel not really comfortable with the idea of giving birth that way. So, once that I went with my midwife, we had a 2 hour chat the first time that we met her, and it was deep. Just like I like talking to people, it wasn't like surface chit chat. Oh, you're fine, and trust yourself, and that's it. No, we went deep, and we looked at what were my all of my fears, my questions. By then, I had a ton of information of what would happen in certain positions of the baby. Was it possible to deliver if it was a breech baby? What would happen if something went wrong? Do we have a plan B for hospital? And all of that is stuff that I brought up, actually took notes from also the information that one of my friends gave me. She's a specialist on prenatal and postnatal care for babies, and she was the one that explained. I'm really thankful to her, Julie. I really appreciate you, because she came to our house and she talked with my partner and I, and she explained to us every single detail of what goes on in a hospital to babies, what they give, like they give glucose instead of immediately getting your baby to latch onto your boob and start drinking and be on your chest. They give glucose, which makes them feel, which makes the whole experience of breastfeeding just messing with that whole thing. They give vaccines, which sometimes I'm sure that people do not even realize that takes place, and just the mishandling of the baby in various forms and shapes, and the cutting of the umbilical cord in a short time, which is definitely a no. A lot of things that I wasn't aware of, and talking to her also allowed me to see, like, whoa, someone has to be really aware of this, because I will be in another dimension giving birth, so someone has to be aware of this. I told my partner, you have to be the one, but what if the doctor doesn't allow us to, that you decide on those things? And this was before I had decided to give birth at home, so that discussion also opened us up to realize that no, we cannot really go for that. There's too much intervention. That's not what we want. So when I talked to our then new midwife, she discussed and she knew all of these things, and she gave us complete ability to choose what kind of extra stuff we wanted. Did we want a vitamin K shot or not? Did we want to give some sort of antibiotic for the eyes after being born, and all those things? We discussed a bunch of things when it comes to our all the stuff that usually goes to babies unnoticed, unfortunately, and that is completely unnecessary from my now personal experience and perspective. So that discussion didn't only go into the physical aspects, and she even gave me positions to start accommodating, if that's a word in English, positioning, that's the word, positioning the baby so that the head is on the vagina, on the birth canal instead of upside down. She moved the baby. By then I think that we already knew it was a girl, so she moved the girl, and she gave me some postures, positions to start accommodating the baby. And we also talked about the inner process, very important aspect that she discussed with us, had to be like straightened out, ironed out within myself in order to prepare for giving birth. And this is sort of what I'm now finding out, that not every midwife gives us that kind of emotional, spiritual support. And basically, something that I fully appreciate from them is that they're like a mixture. Now that I know that not everyone works this way, it's a mixture of midwife and doula. The doulas are more like the emotional female support that has all the wisdom of what a woman goes through in that birthing process, in that time. So basically, she gave us a lot of confidence, a lot of trust in her having all the experience of having brought kids, like over thousands of kids in her 25 years of being a midwife, a traditional midwife here in Mexico. That means they come in families. It's not something that you go to a school to study. No, they live with that. Their grandmother was that, her mother was that, then she was that, and possibly her child will become one as well. So that is a kind of awesome female woman support that I actually hadn't even thought about of until I had a chat with my friend Anna Briggs Thompson, to whom I'm also eternally grateful for, because she merely said, you know, if I could go back to my birthing process, all that I would change is, well, not all, but one of the things that I would change is having female support, having a doula, having a woman, like, you know, having your partner is not enough. And I'm so grateful that she planted that seed, because then I was like, maybe it is so. Maybe I do need like a doula or a midwife. And I started looking for people up in Facebook, and I also got to know of various people that are giving this service, but there was no one that could give the actual midwifery and the doula and being that wisdom embodied in females. And that was the best decision. And with this inner work, I go back to this, the inner work that I had to do. She said, look at the relationship with your mother, clear it up, because I came with a lot of, let's say, judgments and kind of complaining that my mother was very fearful and about the whole thing, and that I wasn't going to tell anyone else about our home birth plans, because I didn't want anyone to be like fearing about the process, because everyone blindly trusts the medical establishment. So if you say, I'm going to a hospital and I'll have a C-section, everyone is like, oh, everything will be so fine. And now I see it every, completely upside down, the opposite. Like when someone tells me that, it's like, oh my God, be careful of this and that. And infections and whatnot that I've known happens in a hospital. And with home births, it's like great, you will most likely be in great hands, and trust yourself and trust your body. But my family, relatives, and everyone are still not in that mindset. So we decided to keep it private up until the last moment when it all started. And it was like, okay, I'm at my mother's home giving birth. And that was a great decision, because we also got to choose who we wanted to be with in such moments. And so the mother aspect, I would say, was very supportive to look at. And it all started also with looking at my own birth. And there's a blog that I wrote. I will place it in the information section of this video, because for many years I thought that I had suffered in my birthing process, because apparently I had the umbilical cord around my neck, and I thought that that was unusual and that I was suffering and that they couldn't get me out. Therefore, it had to be a C-section, and my mother got preeclampsia. There were a bunch of things that caused my birth to not be as great or as fine and dandy as my mother would have liked. So there were things like some kind of resentment that I even had about my birthing process, and how she then sort of blamed me in a covert way for how her body looked after the birth and stuff like that, which they were only ideas and stuff that I had to completely self-forgive and let go of if I wanted to have a clear relationship to motherhood, to my mother, to me becoming my mother. So she gave us a lot of talks about like stepping into motherhood and this birthing process being a rite of passage as well, and kind of letting go of my almost like my childhood in a way, and now stepping into the role of becoming a mother myself. And that, all of that, like inner work, inner suggestion of looking at that was very supportive. And because the birthing process was going to take here at my parents home, um, when she came to visit and see the place and see if it was apt to the whole process, she noticed that my mother was very fearful and reactive and sort of challenging the midwife, like, oh, are you really experienced to do this? And she was very in a high horse and sort of arrogant, I would say. I understand it because it was her fears, mostly like her fears and her lack of trust of the whole process speaking. So when she noticed that, she told me, the midwife, Minerva, whose name is actually by coincidence the same that we had chosen for our girl. So Minerva told us, it might be good if we do some sort of meditation, like a sort of get together with your partner, your mother, and the two midwives, because I'm noticing that your mother is a bit conflicting about the whole situation. She's into fears, and we don't want fears in that birthing process. We want everything to be in harmony, and every single person present there being rooting for you for that process. So I said yes. Personally, I'm not into spirituality. I respect that people can get benefits from it, and that's when I opened up and say, sure, it won't do anything bad to me. I'll give it a go. And it was a very cool guided meditation that Maria Luisa, the other midwife that assisted us, gave, and it was sort of shaman mystic type of ritual. And again, I'm more rational, and I was like, this is not really perhaps doing anything or going to do anything in specific. But I noticed that my mother was being very benefited by it. So that's when I said, cool, if this is supportive for all of us to unite in this coming process of giving birth, then I'm up for it. And it took place as well in the room next door where I gave birth. And that was very supportive for my mother. She felt very calm and very at ease and very trusting, and she was like soothed by the words and the guided meditation that we had. And it was like a healing process also of our own birth and remembering our ancestors. And before, I didn't know how much I would actually need such kind of words in the moment, like that remembrance of people before you have done this. This is not something new or something that you are going to be testing out for the first time in your life. Everyone before you has given birth that way, including my mother with my one sister, right? So that was very cool. And I would say it's unfortunate if not all midwives or pregnant women get this kind of support, because many do benefit from it. They also did some kind of visualization, of which, once again, I have a hard time now using my imagination in that way. And I will explain probably in a next video how that, um, in a way, became a lockdown for me to not fully flow in the birthing process. If there's something that I've learned from this whole process, is to be humble, because I was in a position of, oh, I'm watching documentaries, I'm learning all of these things, and I know all the positions, and I'll know what to do when I get to it, and that sort of thing. And I can only say that I'm really glad that I have these two ladies there with me, solving all of my doubts and checking me, checking us, checking Minerva in my belly, and seeing if she was positioned, and giving all of these suggestions as well in terms of what to start eating when I was getting into my third trimester, such as dates and the raspberry leaf tea, and keeping with my regular exercise, if that was being supportive for me, and I was like at the peak of my life. I also wanted to record this because I guess that right now, 2021, after 2020, a lot of us are kind of mourning the life that we had in 2018. And strangely so, for me, it was the pregnancy. It was like getting ready to give birth, and I got to enjoy it so much because I didn't place any limitations to me when it comes to doing stuff. And yes, I was heavy, and yes, it was, straining to walk as I usually do, but I felt the greatest. While it like, wow, I'm doing this and I'm having like 10 kilos over me. Like, I I did gain like probably 13 kilos or something. That was quite a lot, I would say. Um, but still, I managed to go through it and enjoy it. So I was like, this is awesome. This is not a miserable pregnancy, as many people have told me. And I understand, once again, this is my context. Other women can have other health issues and situations that might not enable them to do this. But if you're healthy, if you're feeling all right, I would say give it a go in having some extra physical activity and see how that sits within you, not only physically but also mentally. It stabilized me a lot. I would say a lot. And that's also another thing. I could eat like everything that I wanted, of course taking measure of not too many sweets and that sort of thing, but I could eat plenty, quite well during the day, because I had a bunch of activity. Like going to swim was the best thing. It's my favorite thing, and I enjoyed it so much. And it's some of those best memories of that year that changed, or that was the last year before everything changed in our lives, right? So if there was something that I would want people, well, pregnant women to be able to do, is to consider swimming. If you like swimming, of course. If you don't, then of course, what's the point? But if you like, or if you, as I, enjoy swimming, then that was the best. And that was extremely supportive also to have some physical condition necessary, because wow, I will make a video detailing how the birthing process was, because one thing I know for certain, my doctor, regular ND, well, no, OBG, would probably not have been patient enough to be there with me the 4 days that the whole birthing process lasted. I'm quite certain of it. And that's what I kept telling my family around me, like my parents and my partner, like, my doctor would have, on the next day, after 24 hours that my very sudden process started, he would have been like, no, 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 there's complication. Let's rather, cut her open and take the baby out, because there's this or that complication, which is the same story that I've heard from many women. Instead of being patient and understanding that a birthing process, for some, it's really quick. It's really like, whoops, it's out, almost like 12 hours of active labor, and that's it. And I will tell my story of having to go through from midnight Wednesday until a Saturday when my baby was born. So I will leave that to later. But to conclude this one, in relation to the midwife support, not only would they give me and provide me the necessary material that I wanted, like documentaries, I have a list of them in my blogs as well, if you want to check them out, because that's what I was into, like watching the movies, watching the documentaries, how it goes in real life. That was my thing. And also being there for me, like if I had some emotional stuff or something, that I could go to them as well. So it is like a psychological, physical support. They would send me like meditations and stuff that you can listen, so that you strengthen your spirit, for lack of a better word, your inner self, to give birth and to remember you're a woman and of the earth and your ancestors, and you have given birth before and you know how to do this, like that sort of preparation. Again, I have to be honest, because I have closed myself off so much to that realm, and at times calling it even bullshit, which I now retract from. I blocked myself from maybe making use of that in a way that was supported, because I would go into my mind and say like, no, yeah, that sounds too airy fairy, that sounds too non-physical. Um, of which I'm changing my mind really, because if it's for support, then why not opening oneself to that and being less analytical and less rational, and being more open to that intuitive female aspect, of which I will discuss, because as I've mentioned before, this is one of the aspects where I saw myself as being unfit or not having what it takes to be a mother and give birth and that sort of thing. Okay, so this is a long video already. The last thing then is saying I can only suggest for pregnant women to get a doula, get a midwife, and make sure that you're really connecting with them on a personal level, that you know you're like on the same page. Because something that's very important is that in the moment of giving birth, if you have any nuisance, any nuances happening with some of the elements, well, people involved in that moment, it will come out, and it will be shown in some emotional outbursts or stuff like that, which I will share in my next video. And with them, I knew that they had my back. Like, I fully trusted them as well, with the process, with knowing what to do with any sort of situation, to have our plan B as well, which included going to a clinic, not a hospital, but a clinic, from a doctor that knew them very well. So it was going to be the similar process of no unnecessary medical intervention, that sort of thing, and just going to a clinic, like a little hospital, so to speak, to give birth. Fortunately, we didn't have to go to that route, but it was also very close to this house, so that was very supportive as well, to know that, okay, if anything goes wrong, we have that plan B. So it's always that. And I also make sure that I would watch information on YouTube from ladies that had to go to the hospital as well, and from midwives and doulas that also assist, like those videos that compare the support that they give at home and that they give in the hospital, and what happens in the hospital, and the kind of procedures and what you have to do if you go to a hospital, like making your list of what you're willing to do and not, and what you're requesting. All of those things, I also studied them completely, because I knew that there was a plan B that I had to be aware of. So it's not like I blindly went into, oh, well, I'm just going to study the or learn about the home birth. No, I knew that there was a possibility of plan B, and I wanted to know what I was getting myself into. And that's also something that I discussed with my midwives. And overall, I think that it was that connection, that communication, that trust, that they ooze in a way, because of that's who they are, that's what they do. Sure, they make money of it, but there's nothing compared to them, and having the patience and having the self experience of having given birth themselves. Some of them also having even the obstetric violence experiences as well. That all of that gives them the authority to say, this is how it's done, and this is the best way, and we've brought many kids on to earth this way, and they're all fine. And that was very, very supportive, very encouraging as well. And just that female support, that female presence, was everything as well when it came to the moment of giving birth. But this is already very long, so I'm going to take it up to here. If you have any comments, questions, let me know in the comment section. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys in some other video for the birthing process. Bye.